1. Before getting started, I want to give you a brief backstory on me, the town, and the church that I grew up in, so that you can better understand the situation. I come from a small town in northern Minnesota, where everybody literally knows everybody. Growing up, I attended the same Lutheran church that my family has attended for generations, since before the structure was brought from the country into town in the 1940s. I know every corner and sound in that church, as I might as well have lived there while growing up. I know a lot of the history, but unfortunately, not enough to answer some of the questions I have about who is haunting it. For my family and I, this started in 2012. The pastor was taking a vacation since he was struggling with depression, and had just recruited me to take up the job of typing, printing, folding, and distributing bulletins to our church and our sister church in the country. My father, sister, and brother would often help with the tasks of printing and folding. Since we are such bad procrastinators, this usually happened at the last minute, later on Saturday night. One day, when we were all on our way to the church to work on the bulletins, my dad and brother were telling my sister and I about what had happened to them on 2 separate occasions before. My dad is a deacon for the church and had brought my brother along late on these Saturday nights, last minute as was our custom, to help him set up for communion the next Sundays. Now, the church used to have this old rotary phone for decades, before someone finally decided to upgrade to a newer model in like 2010. The phone is in the basement, right outside the door of the kitchen. Outside the kitchen there is a larger room with a bunch of tables for when we have potluck or adult Sunday school. My dad and brother were in the area with the tables, not far from the kitchen, when they heard the old rotary phone start to ring. If you're old enough to remember that those phones made more of a bring sort of noise, much different from the phones they have now. My dad doesn't pick up because A, he was in no mood to talk to anyone on the phone, B, who calls a church that late in the evening when no one is likely to be there, and you can find the pastor's number in the phone book, and C, Dad knew they had a phone that didn't ring like that. So they kept working, but the rotary phone that wasn't there anymore kept ringing from the same wall on which it used to hang. The second Sunday that my dad and brother were there, they were in the basement again working on communion, when they hear steady, heavy footsteps walking up and down the aisle between the pews upstairs. The actual chapel was right above where the basement is, and those footsteps didn't stop, didn't step up where the altar is, didn't come out of the chapel. Just steadily walked back and forth, up and down the aisle, for the whole period of time they were there. And they would have known if someone else was in the church. They had already been to the altar to collect the items needed for communion. Any of the doors leading into the church aren't far. And if someone had come in, they would have said hello so they wouldn't spook my dad and brother. Fast forward a few weeks to us working on the bulletins in the basement. I had been a little spooked by what happened and kind of pissed that they hadn't told our mom, my sister, and I sooner. We finished folding and counting the bulletins, and Dad had found an old photo album under the desk the printer sits on, when we hear those steady, heavy footsteps again. This time they're coming from the staircase that leads from the altar into the kitchen, just across the basement from us. We couldn't see the actual stairs, but it was obvious that someone was walking, and wouldn't pause at all. Not even to turn around and go back up or down the steps. My siblings and I were shitting our pants and trying to talk Dad into maybe looking at the photo album another time, when some spirit or something wasn't walking up and down the staircase not 30 feet away from us. This was my first real experience with the paranormal. I had watched TV shows and stuff about it to be done with friends when I was a kid, and you think that you'll be so brave if that sort of thing actually happens to you someday. But it is freaky as hell. I wanted to go look up those stairs, but I just could not bring myself to do so. I still wish I would have, but I still remember how scary it was and know that I couldn't have done that. My old math teacher had gone to the same church, and her and my dad got along pretty well since they're both actual geniuses and math junkies. A few months after the staircase thing happened, my dad said he was talking with her after church, when they brought up what happened to us. She played piano for the Sunday school and would sometimes stay late to organize and practice for Sunday. She said that one night when she was there, she was sitting up by the altar, at the piano, which is actually in front of the stairs where we heard our footsteps. When she hears the steady, heavy footsteps going up and down the stairs leading to the balcony. which is the area of the church that overlooks everything else. Since she is a teacher and thought maybe some kids were playing a prank on her, she called out that she knew it was just them being dumb. It didn't stop. So she got up and went over to look up the steps. Upon looking, the steps stopped, and there was no one there who could have been making them. Keep in mind that she is a very logical thinker. She was the kind of person that wouldn't have lied about anything like this. And I'm pretty sure that my dad and maybe her husband are the only people she has told. Originally, I thought that the haunting might be residual because it was basically just sounds from things or people past. But I'm questioning that because the footsteps occur in different places. Since then, if I've ever had to go into that church after 8, I've always been really on guard. I don't think it's anything bad. I think it just sounds like some spirit is confused or something. And it takes place in the basement as well, which was obviously an add-on after the church was moved in town. Which leads me to believe that whoever it is in there came after the big move. 2. I lived in a seemingly peaceful little Midwest town in southern Iowa for 6 years or so. For much of that time, my husband William and I were living the retired life while operating an online business. Little did we know what really lay beneath this town's quaint exterior, including a horrendous bat infestation throughout the town. This turned out to be the least of our worries, though it cost us nearly $7,000 in removal and proofing against reinfestation. There was a guano stench in the hottest months 2 years later. There were lovely people there, don't get me wrong, including the proprietors of a sip and paint place where we spent many an evening. An antique auction place that served superlative homemade pies while providing a gathering of community. There was the annual band day when people from all over the district came to celebrate. And a lovely county fair, the likes of which we hadn't seen since the 1960s. It was close to my family, within driving distance of several large cities, and provided a lovely area of lakes and nature parks to explore on mild days. The downside was that it was on a major highway system which proved to be a major drug trade stop. In addition, the governor closed down the mental health care facility, cutting aid to patients, and healthcare workers lost their jobs after working there for upwards of 19 years. Several lockdown patients lost their lives to being sent to other care facilities, which were insufficient for their needs. Others were turned out into the streets. There were many nursing and long-term care homes, but also a criminal element who preyed on these same people, posing as handymen or odd-jobsmen. Not knowing this would have a massive effect on my life later. However, to the story. After purchasing the house during the 1st of December while relaxing for the evening, Will and I noticed a ball of black running around an ottoman in the middle of the room, and then leap up to the window above the TV and stay there. We looked at one another, kind of shrugged, and didn't make a big deal of it. We didn't own a cat, and our dog was snoring on the couch beside me. That same weekend it was cold, and we didn't want to leave little Daisy, the Yorkie, in the truck. So leaving her in the secured area with the baby gates, food and water just outside the kitchen, we set about grocery shopping in a town about 35 miles away, and to have a cuppa. When we arrived home, Daisy wouldn't stop shaking. She was in obvious distress. I put her in a papoose sling and held her close. The following day, she had gone outside to do her business, and then coming back into the kitchen, she peed so much. I knew something was desperately wrong with her. It turns out our little companion was suffering from renal failure. 4 days after we moved into the house, she passed. We were heartbroken, but we didn't connect it to the house, as she was older. Things got worse. The basement was the place we stored our product. Large comic boxes of approximately 300,000 comics, ranging from Platinum Age to current. Then the ones I was scanning to put on our online business were in the office upstairs on the main level. There was no water closet on the main level. There was a full bath upstairs, 2 flights of stairs to the upper level, or 1 flight down to the basement. It was a weird little area under the stairs housing the water closet. Around the heating unit was the lavatory, the washer-dryer, and behind the lav was a closed-door shower. The water closet was so small that it being myself alone in the house, I would leave the door open, and it was less claustrophobic. When in there, the same black ball of energy would dance around the stacks of comic boxes like a dervish. This happened so often I got to the point I would just rather walk the 2 flights up to the upper level where I could hear the bats scraping and whispering and clawing before they were removed. I had insomnia after not being able to sleep in the house for a year. It would play the one-up game with me. I would feel someone bump the bed like when folding laundry. I would awake to that. I would tell myself it was my partner. I would roll over, trying to go back to sleep. I would feel a poke on my foot. I would tell myself it was a muscle spasm. It would move up my side progressively, as I would tell myself it's only a spasm, until it would pull my hair in a good hard yank, lifting it off the pillow. I would gather my pillow and remove myself to the couch to watch movies until dawn, when I could sleep, after William would leave the bed. This went on regardless of me using various methods of cleansing. I even asked William to do his part, to no avail. After a year of living in this house, working the land, making improvements, getting to know the people, the town as little as I knew, it grew on me while having the opposite effect on William. He hated it. He decided to leave and move to Oregon, and I waved him goodbye a year later. The paranormal activity ceased once he left, but it came back before I sold the house, long enough to try to vacate a drifter who glommed onto me once William left. The man was unable to stay in my home if I was not there. Later I found out this spirit was an older man who was trying to get me out of there for my own good. I listened. I sold the house and moved out of state. Thank you for listening. 3. I was on holiday with my youngest brother, Mum and Dad. We were staying for part of this trip in Christchurch College, Oxford, England, and the rooms we were lucky enough to stay in were old student accommodation, and by that I mean the actual buildings were really old, I think late 1700s. It was off-term, so the buildings were pretty much empty aside from us. The rooms were part of a big rectangle building set around a middle courtyard with those big, ceiling-high windows, with wooden frames and big sturdy stairs, like you see in period costume dramas and such. My parents were put in a pretty small but nice bottom-floor corner room, and my bro and I were on the second floor on the opposite side of the courtyard. Our room was actually massive. It spanned 5 windows across and a 7-window-long side of the building. As you walked in off the landing, the middle was a big living room, 3 windows out to the courtyard, with a big cabinet directly to the left of the door, and sofas and table in the middle. Further into the left was the door to one of the bedrooms, and then to the right was a smaller study room with a desk, leading through to another bedroom. All of these bedrooms had doors you could close, and we were stoked it was so big. We joked about which rich professors got to live in this mansion as we set our stuff up, as it was way bigger than usual student housing in Australia. So one of the nights my bro and I stayed up really late, or early, around 1:30 a.m. We were lying on the bed in my room, left room, when we realized it was so late, and my bro got up to go to his room but stopped dead at the door. He turns around and asks me if I can come with him to his room because it feels kinda, weird out there. Now he's 14 at the time, so no longer a baby, but the lights were all off and it was super quiet, so I thought it was just night vibes and sleepiness that have him creeped. So I made a joke and gave him a friendly push. But the literal minute I crossed the doorway to the living room, I got full fight-or-flight feelings, goosebumps, heart pumping, and rushed to turn on the lights so fast. Bro gives me that look like, I know you feel it too. But I didn't want bro getting more spooked, so didn't admit it. Just walked him to his room, and he asked me to stay until he was tucked in. I would have given him crap for it if I wasn't also wishing someone would do the same when I got back to my room. Because his room didn't feel so bad though, I thought again maybe it was just the dark that had freaked us out. I told him he could come get me any time, or call me if he wanted to stay in bed. I then shut his door, walked through the little study, and boom! I reached the living area and goosebumps come up all over again. The light is still on, but it feels absolutely weird. Like I am genuinely waiting for someone to pop in the door, or casually stroll up behind me or something. It wasn't threatening, I guess. Just not empty. Or what it had felt like at any other time we'd been there. I power walk across to my room, duck in and grab my phone, and turn on the flashlight to go out and turn off the living room light. I do that and run back into my room and shut the door quickly before jumping straight into bed with my covers up all the damn way. Took me a bit to get to sleep, but my room felt okay with the door shut. So I honestly slept pretty well. Morning now, and on this trip I was my bro's alarm, meaning I would wake him up and give him time to get up slowly as I get ready. So I have to cross the freaky living room again, and I open my door to find it doesn't feel quite like last night now. I'm still kind of tense, but put it down to paranoia. I think we were just being babies. I hop on over to bro's room, knock to check he's awake, and then go back to my room to get my face made up and brush my teeth. Now, the building here had shared toilet and showers, so we had the room keycard thing hung on the cabinet by the door, so at night either of us could get it to go to the toilet without disturbing the other. But because the door was close to my room, I often heard the bro leaving. The floor was wood, covered with that really thin carpet. So you could hear when he moved around, and hear when we each were walking around on the landing. As I'm doing my face, I hear my brother walk across the room, grab the key, open and shut the big wooden door, and walk out onto the landing and then down the stairs to use the toilet. I finish doing my face, go to my door, and my bro now steps out of the small study door directly opposite to my door, rubbing his eyes and yawning. We both look at each other for a second, and I go, "Didn't you just go to the toilet?" His jaw drops and he goes, "What? No, wasn't you going?" We look at the key. It's on the hook. The door is shut. But we both heard someone stomp the hell across the room, open and then shut the door, as well as head down the stairs. We went out and checked the landing, the stairs, all of the floor we could get to, we checked. We knew we were the only residents for our entire week-long stay in this part of the building. It didn't happen again, but needless to say, it freaked us right out. So somebody came to visit, and just calmly left when they were done saying hello. 4. A little history on the house. Built in the late 1800s to early 1900s, colonial style. Original owners are Harold and Francine Reed, who died in the house. Basement was connected to the neighbor's house by a tunnel that they used to shuttle bodies back and forth. It was later sealed off when the building was separated and turned into housing. I had many odd experiences in this house. It's very old, and the inside was almost 100% original, with only slight remodeling done over the years. So I have a large family, 5 younger siblings plus my dad and stepmom. It's a 3-bedroom house with a basement that was used as the morgue and mortuary cosmetologist room, and was also my room. My sisters shared the room to the right of the staircase upstairs. My brother had his own room to the left, and directly in front of the staircase is where my 2 youngest siblings shared a room. When we first moved in, there were some superficial problems that needed to be fixed with the drywall and foundation of the house. We called in a guy to fix the drywall in my sister's room. He was a super friendly guy from New Orleans. He listened to our stories we had so far with strange experiences, and went on to say how his whole family knew a lot about and practiced hoodoo and voodoo. No stranger to unexplainable events, he started to act a little weird when we went upstairs to show him the cracks in the drywall. My stepmom and I were the only ones home at the time. We're both strong believers in the paranormal. There's closets on both sides of the room, which were part of the original foundation of the house. They stretch back along the entire perimeter of the bedroom. Imagine a walk-in closet with an angled ceiling, 6 feet high, 2 feet wide, maybe 10 feet long. As he's walking into the closet on the left, he stops dead in his tracks, comes back out, and looks at my stepmom with the most serious expression. "Yeah, so I don't normally say anything to homeowners when I feel a presence, but I feel compelled to tell you. There is something dark in this bedroom, and I think it would be a good idea for you to flip your house and use the money you get from that to buy a new one. There's some bad juju here." "What, are you messing with us now?" "Yeah, no. You should probably just flip the house and move immediately. I'm not normally scared of this stuff, but it's taking me all I've got not to pack my stuff and leave." Mandy, my stepmom, and I brushed it off, not heeding the warning. Man, we should have actually listened. The guy fixed the drywall and gave us some sage to burn before he left. When we burned the sage, some freaky stuff started to happen. We were downstairs in the kitchen when we heard the door to my brother's closet open. Mind you, you really have to pull on this door to get it opened. It drags on the floor and is really just a hassle. Anyway, Mandy starts to freak out, and me having a "you can't touch me because I'm invisible" attitude when it comes to this kind of shit, I go investigate with Mandy and Toe behind me. We walk up the spiral staircase and look in Logan's room. Logan's closet door is completely open, which was strange because we always kept it closed. As we peer further around the corner, I hear someone say, "Hey." As I hear the whisper, Logan's closet door proceeds to slam shut with an unimaginable force. Mandy freaks out and runs downstairs. We both hightail it out to the back porch and catch our breath, sweaty and pale with shock. We stuck together for the rest of the day, even going so far as to stay in the bathroom with one another when either of us had to use it. We did not want to be alone. When my dad came home from work that day, it was around Christmas time. We were getting dinner ready. My two youngest siblings were also back from a play date, so it was just the five of us. Landon and Chloe, siblings, were fussing and wouldn't stop crying, so Mandy put on some Christmas music for them to dance to while she cooked. 10 minutes later, we all hear pounding on a door upstairs. It was like John Cena was trying to escape the pits of wrestling hell. Dad, who was a skeptic, had a worried expression. I told him to come upstairs with me and look. We walked up to Logan's room again, me in front with Dad following closely behind, and saw Logan's door whip open and slam shut even harder than it did earlier that day. It literally left a crack on the door as well as in the frame. After that, my dad took the remainder of the sage and hung it in the closet. The house was quiet for a few days after that, but it was still spooky. 5. Get ready, 'cause this is a doozy. I'm in the Appalachian Mountains, and my neighborhood is very old. There is a southern mansion just 2 houses down from me that is over 200 years old. It's gorgeous, but has always kinda creeped me out. I've walked past it when I knew for a fact that it was empty, and seen lights moving inside from room to room. I've checked to make sure the doors were locked one day, as we were worried about people squatting in an empty house. They were all locked. And then heard all the doors creeping open behind me as I walked up the driveway. And all the garden gnomes are decapitated. So yeah, it's creepy. There is an older man who lives right next door to us, and I will call him Jay to respect his privacy. He is good friends with my dad, and one day told him all about his childhood. Apparently, Jay grew up in that house, and he lives next to it so he can look after it. He said that every night growing up he heard someone breaking into the house. His father would go down with a baseball bat and no one would be there. This happened so often that they got a security system. And the break-ins kept happening, but it wouldn't set off the system. Nothing was ever stolen, and no evidence of a break-in was found, but they would always hear someone forcing the door open, stomping around, and then they would just disappear. Jay had an older sister. She started sleepwalking when they moved in. She would wake up downstairs crying and feeling unsettled. One day she woke up in the yard, the doors were locked, and her wrists and neck were covered in bruises. His mother was home alone on New Year's Eve when everyone else was out celebrating. Her little dog was pawing at the bed. This usually means they want to be let out, but it was freezing, so she ignored it. It kept pawing until it actually pulled the covers off of her, so she got up to let it out, but couldn't find the dog. Then she remembered that she had let it out an hour ago, and it was still outside. That story made me shiver when Jay told me. The whole family was accustomed to shadow figures and strange occurrences, but they couldn't afford to move. They got the house for very cheap, and it had enough room for their large family. Now I know why it sells for so cheap. Only Jay's and the original owner's family who built it have ever stayed there for more than a year, until recently. About 3 years ago, a really nice family moved in. I watched their kids, but never told them about the creepy stuff. One day the wife came to our house to talk to my parents. She asked my dad about our security system and how to get one. She said that every night someone would break in, but they could never find evidence of it. She would see shadow figures and her kids were acting strange. She started to cry because it was all very overwhelming for her. That's when my dad told her about Jay and how he had experienced the exact same things. She and her family moved out after 6 months, and it sat empty for a while. A new family moved in about 2 years ago. They never leave the house, and don't talk to any of their neighbors. Which is weird for my neighborhood because we all watch each other's kids and walk our dogs together. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 152. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Every time I'm doing that, I always draw a blank right as I say what video it is I'm doing. Sometimes it takes several takes. Okay, let's see, we're heading into the weekend now. I will probably stream either Saturday or Sunday. Don't know what I'm streaming. And I expect I'll be playing Star Trek Online with a few people at some point as well. The two may coincide if everyone agrees to it, but if they don't, then that's fine. We'll have a little private game and I'll stream something else. We shall see. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.